The French press review. And first of all, papers are continuing to focus on these bad growth figures that are coming out of the French economy. Bad news, more bad news for French President François Hollande.
Just more bad news that keeps rolling in. Let's take a look at the front page of Le Monde. It says that Hollande is facing a dead end. Now, keep in mind, this is Le Monde. This is the kind of headline you would expect, say, from Le Figaro or another right-leaning paper in France. But this is Le Monde. It's as neutral as it gets. So it's still pretty critical of the president here. It says these growth figures that were published yesterday really contradict the government's predictions. It's the second semester in a row that France is facing zero growth. And in fact, they have a very useful little graphic where you can see just how much growth has ground to a halt since François Hollande's election. That's the dotted line there in the middle. Le Monde says that the economy is flatlining.
Wow, well, Le Monde also has a column by Finance Minister Michel Sapin trying to brighten things up a little.
First of all, he takes responsibility for these growth figures, but not surprisingly, he says it's not just France's fault. He says it's Europe's fault as well, and he calls on the EU to reorient its economic policy, starting with a devaluation of the euro to boost competitiveness, and he also calls for an increase in both public and private investment. Now, an article in Le Parisien today would seem to agree with Michel Sapin that this is a European-wide issue. You can see here it talked about a European-scale failure. And it says that what's especially significant is these growth figures that came out across Europe yesterday show that Germany and Italy are struggling as well, and these tend to be strong economies in Europe. Now, what is the cause of all this? Well, L'Humanité, the communist paper, says there's a very obvious culprit, and that's austerity. Now, it wouldn't be surprising that a communist paper would blame such austerity measures, but according to L'Humanité, it's really these recent austerity measures put in place in France, namely cuts in public spending that have ruined growth. You can see that in that article.
Another French paper is leading with the unrest in Iraq. Libération focuses on how the Catholic Church is reacting.
That's right. This is a very interesting article in Libération today. It says that the Catholic Church is giving its stamp of approval to the military response in Iraq against ISIS. Now, Libération wonders, does this mean that the Catholic Church is on some sort of a war path? That seems kind of like an oxymoron, talking about a church being on the war path.
Well, it's not that they've been on the warpath before, right?
Exactly. Well, let's not take a look at history too much. But Libération says that over the past couple of days, we've been seeing all these Catholic Church officials here in France and abroad raising their voice to give their approval to these military operations against ISIS in Iraq, saying it's legitimate, it's necessary. Basically, it's a just war. Now, this goes against the Catholic Church's traditional opposition to war in the 20th century, and its calls for peace. For instance, Libération says that John Paul II was staunchly opposed to the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and then last year, Pope Francis, he was speaking out against targeted airstrikes in Syria. So what has changed? Well, according to Libération, it seems like the atrocities that are being carried out by ISIS in Iraq are just too much for the Catholic Church, and don't forget that they're targeting Christians. Minorities, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Now here in France, officials are set to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Allied invasion of southern France and Provence.
That's right. Now, we always talk about the D-Day invasion in Normandy. Of course, we commemorated that back in June. Today, France is going to commemorate the 70th anniversary of Operation Dragoon. I didn't even know that's what it was called, but basically the invasion of southern France on August 16th, 1944. It happened 70 days after D-Day. Interesting little tidbit of information there. Now, French officials are going to pay tribute to African soldiers who participated in the invasion and sacrificed their lives to liberate France. There's going to be delegations from 19 African countries. 13 African heads of state will join President François Hollande in this ceremony in Toulon today. Now, it's been the subject of quite some controversy here in France because French officials have often paid tribute to, say, American, Canadian soldiers, British soldiers who participated in the D-Day invasions, but, well, the 230,000 African soldiers who fought under the French flag, well, they've often been forgotten, according to Le Figaro. Other French papers actually interview veterans. You can read, for instance, an Algerian veteran who remembers it like it was yesterday. He was just 19 years old. That's in Le Figaro. And this guy, he's a Senegalese veteran. So it's very interesting to hear these veterans talking about what happened 70 years ago today.
It's good that we're not forgetting their role in this very important conflict. Thank you very much, Florence Villamino. We'll be back a bit later, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay with us here on France 24.